Well, in 2000, it was estimated that the seas surrounding Europe contain 2.3 million tons of sulfur dioxide, 3.3 million tons of nitrogen dioxide, while the particulate matter was estimated at 250,000 tons. By 2020, it is estimated that these emissions will grow by 40 to 50%. Another interesting fact is that almost 70% of those emissions, of those shipping emissions, happen within a small distance from the land, around 400 kilometers, something that has resulted in the pollution of the air, the coastal areas as well. And the diagram on the right basically shows the projected sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide emissions for 2020 from the European Union land-based sources and from international shipping in the European sea area, in the absence of additional control measures. Basically, the European emissions of sulfur dioxide from land-based sources have been decreased significantly over the past 20 to 30 years. And if we take no further action, these emissions around Europe, it is estimated that they will exceed the total of European Union land-based emissions by 2020. Another key challenge that we have to consider is the EU legislation for the sulfur dioxide emissions. The basic first directive was published voted in 1999. This directive was later amended by the directive of 2005, which was designating the Baltic Sea, North Sea, and the English Channel as a sulfur emission control areas, in which the maximum sulfur content of maritime fuels has to be was set on 1.5%. The initial directive of 1999 was further amended by the directive of 2012, which was requiring all EU member states as of January 2015 to ensure that all ships in the Baltic Sea, North Sea, and the English Channel to use fuels with sulfur content of no more than 0.10%. A ship can still use a fuel with a higher sulfur content, but it has to use also the appropriate exhaust cleaning system. Well, the table below basically shows how the limits changed over the time. In the sulfur emission control areas, until July 1st, 2010, the limit was 1.5%. Later changed, and until the end of 2014, the limit was 2%. And this one was later changed, will be changed. No, it was later changed in beginning 2015. The limit was set at 0.10%. In the other sea areas outside sulfur emission control areas, the ships can operate, were able to operate using a fuel that contained 4.5% of sulfur dioxide until the beginning of 2012. And the other directive was setting the limit at 3.5%, while in January 2020, the limit has to be, well, it is set at 0.5%. There is also a European legislation for the emissions of nitrogen dioxide. The European legislation for nitrogen dioxide emissions was introduced by the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, and all the rules that surround the ship pollution are contained in the International Convention on the Prevention of Pollution from Ships. And in September 1997, the International Convention on the Prevention of from Ships was amended by the 1997 protocol, which contained the regulations for the prevention of air pollution from ships. The IMO emission standards are commonly referred as Tier 1, 2, and 3 standards, and the first Tier 1, was defined in 1997 through the 1997 protocol, while the Tiers 2 and 3 were introduced by the 2008 amendment. Basically, says that the nitrogen dioxide emissions from diesel engines are controlled through specific requirements under the Engine International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate Program. This sets the emissions limits for diesel engines depending on the engine maximum operating speed. Tiers 1 and 2 are global, while Tier 3 applies only in nitrogen dioxide emission control areas. Well, the diagrams basically show what we just discussed. It shows the limits on the self-controlled areas and on the global, on the other areas as well, and the limits according to Tier 1, 2, and 3 tires based on the speed of the engine. Another key challenge is the fact that between the different transportation and means of transport, shipping is the most environmentally friendly and cost-efficient one for transporting large quantities of goods over long distances. In particular, the short sea shipping contributes in reducing the congestion of Europe's busy road network. So, considering the EU legislation we previously discussed and the gigantism of the department of the vessels, it is obvious that the cargo being handled in the European ports will increase. So, considering those key challenges, we have to do something. We have to turn to alternative fuels. And some examples of alternative fuels include the LNG, liquefied natural gas, low sulfur fuels such as MGO, marine gas oil, and LSH4. Liquefied petroleum gas. Another example is dimethyl ether, synthetic fuels such as fishery torps, Methanol and ethanol are possible fuels as well, biodiesel or biogas, hydrogen. These are all possible solutions against heavy fuel oil that shipping maritime currently uses. We have to consider all these before we come to our final choice. However, considering that we have so many options, we have to basically follow the process, the decision-making process, come to our final choice. The decision-making process. It's a set of 8 steps that begins with identifying the problem we need to solve. It moves to selecting the alternative that we prefer, and concludes with evaluating the decisions affected. It is basically a mental process that results from the selection of a course of action among several alternatives. The result of the decision-making process is our final choice, most preferred one. It can be used, a process that can be used for both individual and group decisions, and it should not be confused with problem analysis, which is a process that is used before we move on to the decision-making process. Through problem analysis, basically, we analyze information that we gather and analyze information that we later on use on the decision-making process. Well, it consists of 8 steps. The first step is the identification of the problem. We have a problem basically is defined here, and it is defined as a discrepancy between an existing and a desired state. There's some cautions about problem identification includes making sure that the problem is not just a symptom, it is a problem, just not a symptom of a problem. The problem identification is subjective. Any discrepancies come by comparing current results with some standards. And lastly, the managers are likely to characterize any discrepancy as a problem if they perceive that they don't have the authority, information, or any other sources needed to act on it. The second step includes the identification of the decision criteria. These are important factors that we consider as important in order to solve our. On the third step, we allocate the weights on the criteria we identified on the previous step, and so that the decision-making process, all criteria considered in the decision-making process are not equally important. So the decision maker has to weigh the items in order to give them a correct priority in the decision. In a very simple approach, if we give 10 as highest important factor, we assign a weight to the rest. On the fourth step, we identify our alternatives. Here we have just listed the alternatives we consider for that solve our problem. On the fifth step, we analyze the alternatives. During this step, we appraise each alternative's strengths and weaknesses, and we evaluate them against the weighted criteria. During this step, we calculate the total score of each alternative, and the one alternative with the highest score, we should choose as our final choice. This assessment is clearly a personal judgment, and we also consider that if one alternative scores 10 on every one of the criteria we consider, we need to consider the weight. Step number 6 refers to the selection of an alternative. Basically, select the alternative that has scored the highest during the previous. Number 7, we implement our alternative. We basically put what we have selected into action, while on step number 8, we have to evaluate whether our decision was the correct one or not. We can now apply this decision-making process to our problem with choosing the appropriate alternative fuel. Basically, here, what is our problem? We have to identify our problem. Our problem here is the reduction of sulfur emissions, both in sulfur emission control areas and the rest of the area outside sulfur. We can do that by turning to an alternative fuel or an alternative solution by using the current fuel, the heavy fuel oil. On steps 2 and 3, we have to identify our decision criteria and assign them with their weights. So, according to my thinking, the criteria we have to consider is cost of investment, the price of fuel, fixed current life, the percentage of sulfur emission control area operation, the maintenance cost of each solution, the safety of each solution, and the ship's performance by changing to a different fuel. I can now assign them with the weight. So scoring from 1 and 10 the highest, I assign to the cost of investment 10 to the fuel 8 and 8, ship's current life 9, so sulfur emission control area operation 7, to the maintenance cost 3, to the safety fuel 9, performance 2. On step number 4, we have to identify our alternatives. We saw that we have so many solution choices with alternative fuels, but I'm going to narrow this one to MGO, moringa soil, LS84, LNG, and 84 with the solution of scrubber. During this step number 5, we analyze our alternatives based on the weights we assigned and the score that they obtained. Okay. What is the question?
I just want to find out. My name is Kana from the World Maritime University. I just want to find out, it's a question on criteria and weight. How do you determine the weight for each criteria that you have? The reason I'm asking this question, being myself from South Africa, most investment, when we assess alternatives, we also look at options that give job creation and things like that. So we're not only looking at the investment, but we look at the spin-off effect on the economy. So will you consider that in your criteria?
Basically, this is a very simple process for deciding between alternatives, and I mostly use it for attaining the whole decision-making process. This is really simple. We usually don't use this process for deciding between such alternatives that require more analysis. The impact of the society is important as well. So it is basically just to explain you, it is just an example to explain you how the process really works. It is personal. It is my perspective on the selection of between the alternatives. You can use other factors, assign different weights as well. Would you like to add? Would you like to solve it?
My question
well,
is
just to see how it really works. It's just an example.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome. According to the weight of each criterion and the score of each alternative, we get a total score. So here for MGO we have 363, for LS-HFO we have 376, LNG has scored 379, and HFO with scrubber 375. Clearly here we choose the alternative with the highest score, which is LNG. And on the next step we have to see how we can apply this alternative. And this alternative basically requires electricity on the ship in order to use it as an alternative as fuel, while on the final step we have to go back and evaluate if chosen fuel has corrected the problem. The problem, just to remind you, was the control of emissions in sulfur emission control areas and non-sulfur emission control areas as well. So I've made my decision on the previous step, but it is likely that my decision was poor, but had led to a good outcome, or was a good decision that had led to a poor outcome. For this reason, it is important to support our decision making in order to make better decisions that can lead to better outcomes. And to support our process decision making, we can use decision support tools, or what they also call it, decision support systems, which are basically a wide range of computer-based tools that are developed to support the decision making. They are provided with a dedicated interface in order to directly and more easily accessible by non-specialists, basically those who take They have some specific simulation and prediction capabilities, but they can also be used for communication, training, or experimentation for the decision makers. They are able to facilitate dialogue, to exchange information, and thus they provide insights to non-experts, and they support them in the exploration of policy options. They also tend to be aimed at ill-structured or semi-structured unspecified problems that usually the upper-level management faces on their everyday business. They emphasize on flexibility and agility, by including any changes in the external and internal environment and the decision-making process that the user utilizes. And finally, they focus on satisfying the decision makers in an effective and repeatable way. The concept of decision support tools is not a new one. The first decision support system was developed in around 1969 by Ferguson and Johnson, was focused on developing a production scheduling application. It is an extremely broad concept, and the definitions that have been developed around it vary according to the author's point of view. Some of the definitions that have been developed are those that I have on this slide. Keenan Scott Morgan in 1978 stated that decision support tools couple the intellectual resources of individuals with the capabilities of the computer to improve the quality of decisions. Basically, they are computer-based support tools for management decision makers who deal with semi-structured problems. Durbin, on the other hand, in 1995, described that a decision support tool is an interactive, flexible, and adaptable computer-based information system that is especially developed for supporting solution of a non-structured management problem or improved decision making. It basically utilizes data, it provides an easy-to-use interface, and it allows for the decision makers' own insight. We can come to some conclusions considering those two definitions. Basically, we can say that a decision support tool is a computer-based program. It has to operate in a computer, otherwise it cannot be stated as a tool. It is interactive, it interacts with the decision maker, and it is flexible. It is flexible and it is made for supporting and not substituting the decision maker. Finally, in order to consider the decision support tools, two assumptions have to be reasonable. The first one is that we have obtained good information that is likely to improve our decision making process. And the second one is that managers need and want such a tool, to use such a tool during their decision making. The decision support tools have certain characteristics. The first one is that they provide support in semi-structured and unstructured situations. They can support various managerial levels, from the upper level manager to the lower one. They can support both individuals and groups. They can support interdependent and sequential decisions. They can also support all the phases of the decision-making process. They can support a variety of decision-making processes styles. They are responsive, they are adaptive, they have user-friendly interfaces, and basically their goal is to improve the effectiveness of the decision-making process. The decision maker can control the decision-making process. It's not the tool that controls the decision-making process, but it's a decision. The end users of the decision support tools can build simple systems. The decision support tools utilize models for analysis, and they can provide access to a variety of data sources, formats, and types. Its goal is not to replace the decision maker, but to extend his capabilities. The decision support tools consist of four major components. The first one is the language system, which is a system that contains all the messages that decision tool is able to have. Presentation system, which consists of all the messages that the decision support tool can produce. Knowledge system, which consists of all the knowledge that the decision tool has stored and retained in its database. And the problem processing system, which is basically the decision support tool software engine that recognizes and solves the problems during the making of a decision. Okay, let's see now how these components, the decision support tool, connect with each other. This figure illustrates how the four subsystems of the decision support tools are related to each other, and how these are related to the decision support user. The users are typically the decision makers or a participant in the decision-making process. However, a decision support tool, a developer, or an administrator, or some data entry person, or a device could also consider as a user of a decision support tool. In any case, a user makes a request to the decision support tool by selecting a desired element of its language system. Desired element could be a request to accept notes, to clarify previous requests or responses, to solve a problem faced by the decision maker, to detect any problems, and so on and so forth. Once the problem processing system has been requested to process a particular land system. It then moves on with processing it, and by processing it, well, it requires the problem processing system to select some portion of the knowledge system, acquire some additional knowledge from external the user, or to generate some new knowledge, perhaps by using selective or active knowledge in order to that. The processing can change the knowledge held in the knowledge system by assimilating generated or acquired knowledge, and the problem system can by choosing what presentation system elements to present. For this reason, some problem processing system behaviors are overt, witnessed by the user via the problem processing system emission of the presentation system elements, while others are covert. They are strictly internal. They cannot be witnessed by the user. And they usually have assimilations of knowledge into the knowledge system. A problem processing system does not always have to be reactive in the sense of producing behaviors that are reactions to the user's request. The problem processing system's activity can be triggered by events detected inside the decision tool or outside the decision tool. For example, a particular change to the knowledge system content may trigger some convert or a disturbance or an entrepreneurial opportunity. In a similar way, the acquisition of a particular fact about the decision support tools environment may trigger overt, witnessed by the user, or covert, strictly internal, and problem system behavior, such as analysis of a situation, analysis of the outcomes of a situation, with results being assimilated into the knowledge system for subsequent use. We basically have 7 different types of decision support. The first one is the text-oriented decision support tool. In this type of the knowledge system is made up of electronic documents. Potentially interesting to the decision maker. The problem processing system of this type of consists of a software that performs various manipulations on the content of any of the documents. The language system of this DSP contains requests corresponding to the various allowed manipulations. The presentation system consists of images of stored text that can be produced, and messages that can be the decision maker. And these type of decision support usually are used in functionalities such as text mining or content analysis and analysis. Another type of decision support tool is the hypertext decision tool, which basically has the same abilities as text-oriented decisions, but this can also link each piece of text to other pieces of text based on their based on the fact that they are conceptually related. The problem processing system of this scheme consists of a software that performs various manipulations on the content of any of the stored documents. The user can also has the ability to also create or delete or transverse the links between the documents. The basic benefit of this decision support tool is that the decision makers are able to store and recall large volumes of concepts and text and they don't have the obligation to memorize. They need to memorize. Another type of decision support tool is database-oriented. Basically, here the knowledge is handled by the tool. The knowledge is handled by the district. It has large volume and structure. The knowledge system holds information about a table. For example, what's called. And they can also hold actual value with the problem processing system of this type. It has three kinds of software. It has a database control system. It has an interactive query processing system and various custom-built processing systems. The database control system consists of capabilities that enable installation of table structure and content. The user can create or delete records. He or she can find or revise the table structures. He can find or update the records, so forth. Another type of decision support tools is spreadsheet-oriented decision support tool. The user here has more power and he's able to create, view, and modify knowledge assimilated in the knowledge system. And he's also able to tell the problem processing system to carry out the instructions they contain. The knowledge system here is comprised of files that house spreadsheets. Each spreadsheet is a grid of cells in which the problem processing system determines cells values. This type of decision support tools usually use what-if analysis, but enable implications of some set of assumptions embodied in the cell definition. And finally, this type of decision support tools are the ones that are heavily used today in organizations. Another type of decision support tool is the solver-oriented decision support tool. Basically, a solver is a procedure that follows instructions that the computer can execute in order to solve a particular type of problems. These types of decision support tools are frequently equipped with more than one solver, and the user's request indicates which is appropriate for the problem at hand in order to use a specific area of problems, such as the financial problems. And in this type of decision support tools, the solvers can be incorporated into the tool used either by using the fixed method, in which the solver cannot be easily added, deleted, or modified, or the flexible method. A flexible solver may allow the user to customize the presentation of results, provides the user with more power and the ability to customize the results of the decision support tool. Another type of decision support tools is the rule-oriented decision support tool. This type of DST is based on a knowledge management technique that involves representing a processing rules. The knowledge system here holds one or more rule sets, where each rule set pertains to reasoning about what a recommendation to the user who is seeking for advice on some subject. Basically, the basic form of the rules is if something, we describe the possible situation, then we describe the outcome, the conclusion, and because we justify why we are taking this kind of action. The presentation systems here includes messages that present advices and explanations to the user. The language system contains requests for advice and requests for explanation. And the problem processing system, which is usually called engine, follows the actions specified in the rules. Another type of support is the compound decision support tool. And this basically someone can either use multiple decision support tools, each oriented towards a particular technique, or use a single decision support tool that encompasses multiple techniques. The first option is decision support tool has its own language and each decision support tool is good in a specific. When the results of one technique need to be processed through another technique, then it is decision maker's responsibility to translate their response from one decision support tool into requests to the other decision support tool. In the second option, meaning combining and having a DST that encompasses both techniques, we have only one language system and one presentation system for the decision maker to learn, and the effort required of the decision maker who wants to see the results of one technique in the processing of another technique basically varies here. And it is based on the way in which multiple techniques have been integrated into one compound decision support tool. These types of decision support tools are usually utilized today by large organizations, and where they combine a data warehouse with analytical solvers to derive new knowledge, or data warehouse with data mining solvers that generate knowledge by discovering the patterns in the data that they can later use them in during their decision making process. By considering those different types of decision support tools, we basically have to consider when deciding in which particular decision type this decision support tool to use. We basically have to consider the support needs that the decision maker has, and then provide the appropriate management information.